All right. Second lightning round question. Don't take my word for it. What is your favorite leadership book and why?
Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Effective Leaders. Or the
Now,
7
is that different? That's different than highly effective people. This is
You're right. You're right.
Oh, sorry.
I got the
I
title
thought I was
wrong.
like, oh my gosh, I don't know that one, but okay.
I guess I put it in the context of highly effective people, and I'm talking to leaders.
Okay.
Why? Because I use a chapter from that or different chapter from that at least once a week in my coaching of CEOs. The most popular one or the most relevant one is Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants. And how do we spend our time? And CEOs struggle with the quadrant called it's important, but it's not urgent. And they almost never get to the things that are things like planning or working on the board relationships or issues that aren't urgent in their day, but they recognize have to be done, building their own skill set. The other thing I like about it is when you really look at what you're trying to accomplish, you can use this as a prioritization mechanism. And I want to move CEOs out of the quadrant called important and urgent, because that's where they tend to live. And that's called burnout. If you stay and you treat everything as important and urgent, you will burn out.
And just for people who may not know, I know it's probably well known broadly, but the quadrant or the matrix is a 2x2. Yes. Along one axis is urgency, low, high, and the other axis is importance, low, high. And what you're talking about is you can be in one of those 4 quadrants. You could be working on things that are not important and they're not urgent, or you could be working on things, to your point, that are urgent and important that might lead to burnout. And I think what you're hinting at is how do you create that balance between creating space and time to focus on the things that are important but not urgent. So, for example, planning, strategy, acquisitions. It hurts your head and it takes time. It's so much easier to just respond to the issue of the day, of the moment, of the second with some customer getting escalated. So what are the tips and tricks that you recommend for people to take control of their time and to understand where they're investing their life energy and how to shift it so they create space for the important, not urgent?
The answer is to block off time on your calendar, protect that time, because a lot of CEOs will block off time on their calendar, but they let it fill up with all the stuff that it didn't get done earlier in the day. So no, it needs to be protected and determine that I'm going to work on X. Let's say I'm going to work on my board relationships. Great. I'm going to block off a 2-hour window and I'm only going to work on my board relationships. Now, how do I do that? I have to turn everything else off. I cannot be on Slack. I cannot be on email. I cannot answer the phone. Now, there's a safety valve that I like CEOs to give, which is you tell people, I'm actually not going to be available Friday afternoon. If there's an emergency, I will look at a text. So text me, but only if it's an emergency. Otherwise, don't expect me to respond. Part of this is teaching people, are you going to be highly responsive or not? And frankly, the answer is you should not always be highly responsive. What that creates is people asking you more and more questions if you're always responding right away.
Yeah.
And then you never have time to do the things that you wanted to do. You're actually responding to everybody else. So if you can teach people, one of my CEOs said, I'm going to check email 4 times a day. Here are the times: 8 in the morning, at noon, at 4 o'clock, and 8 at night. And so you're going to get a window where if you email me at 8:30, you're not going to hear from me for a few hours. Get used to it.
I'm offering a complimentary coaching session to CEOs. If you're accepted, you'll receive a one-on-one coaching session with me at absolutely no cost or obligation. Due to my current commitments, I'm only able to accept a modest number of requests for coaching. During the coaching session, we'll immediately go to work and address your highest priority challenges. You will walk away with ways to begin solving your biggest problems. And you'll get a sense for whether or not we're a fit for each other. To see if you qualify for this coaching session, visit the website currently showing on your screen, or click the link in the description below. Thank you.
That's great. There's a great book by a guy, David Allen, called Getting Things Done. And he talks a lot about this: do it, defer it, delegate it, or dump it. And how do you look at tasks and assign them, put them on your calendar to work on them and create those blocks. The other trick I would offer is do time tracking. At the end of the week, go back and categorize where you actually ended up spending your time. And then you can be deliberate and intentional about where you want to spend your time going forward. So the thing I like to do, I love meeting with customers. I like doing it when we're not in the fire, but I don't spend enough time there. And so I work with my EA to say, okay, we need to make this a priority. And I think it's another thing is go get a cheap EA. You can get them from, now they have AI versions, but you can get them out of the Philippines. If someone wants to know one, call me. But they can really help you manage your calendar and manage your priorities. If you say you want to meet more customers, you want to spend 10% of your time with your customers, you got to block that time, you got to do the outreach, and you got to protect that time, to your point. But then you can bring accountability to it by reviewing it on a weekly basis.
Well said. Now, if we have time, I have one other chapter that I'd just like to talk about because he has seven habits of highly effective people. The next one that I think is the least understood is called Seek First to Understand. Now, what happens is CEOs will come to me and they say, somebody's doing something crazy in my organization, or they're not doing what I want them to do, or they're being very difficult, and I don't understand why. Now, what happens is typically the CEO will bring that person in a one-on-one and they'll say, why are you doing X? Or why are you not doing what I asked you to do? What I counsel CEOs to do is do not use the word why. Why creates a response where the person is defensive. Now they have to justify what it is that they're doing. Instead, there's a wonderful phrase, please help me understand how you're thinking about this. It comes from curiosity. And now what's amazing about this is that when you say, please help me understand, people will actually tell you what's going on. They won't be defensive about it. And sometimes their decision-making is exactly dead on. You just didn't have the context to understand it.
Yeah,
Other times they're wrong and they shouldn't be doing that and you need to correct it. But it creates an open dialogue when you seek first to understand.
That's great. I often describe that as lead with inquiry, not inquisition.
Perfect.
How do you ask good questions? The other thing that I've heard, and I'm stealing it from someone, is the ladder of inference. As a CEO, what your job is to help people articulate their assumptions and share the data. And when you get a better understanding of their data, you can share your data. When you get a better understanding of their assumptions, you can share your assumptions. You still may end up with a different point of view in terms of what should be done. And then you got to get it clear about whose decision it is.
Right.
And if you just have an opportunity as the CEO to walk through how that person thought about this situation, what data they were using, the assumptions they were applying, and why they're going, as long as you got some guardrails in place, you may not agree with it, but you can say, go, do it. And then let's check in and see how it went for you. I may have done something different, but this is your call. And so they feel empowered, they feel smart, and they feel like they got you got their back.
Right.
Great. All right.